Melville. It's a family-run, fully estate winery, so we grow all of our own fruit. We don't buy any grapes from anyone. Ron Melville's the owner. Sons Chad and Brent manage the vineyard and the business. All right, I'll give you a little history on Ron Melville. He was a stockbroker. He had 2 seats on the Pacific Exchange and was involved with securities for many years. He bought some property in Knights Valley up by Calistoga and was growing Cabernet and Merlot for other people. It was just a growing business. He wasn't making wine. He fell in love with Pinot Noir, much too hot up there for the Pinot Noir, and found this property in the mid-90s. And it used to be bean fields here, and he purchased this land and decided to really pursue his passion for Pinot Noir. And this since has become a registered AVA as Santa Rita Hills. About 140 acres here, and then we've got another 50 acres under lease up in Cat Canyon and Los Alamos. That's out of the Santa Rita Hills AVA. It's Santa Barbara County fruit, but fully estate, so we do everything ourselves from the ground to the glass, similar to the chateau concept in France. Okay. A couple things about this place that make it unique as a place, and one of them is the Santa Rita Hills over here to my left. This is one of the only 2 east-west oriented mountain ranges in North America. The other one's in Santa Maria, 30 miles north, okay? So this gives a natural Ventura. You can feel the breeze coming today. It's a constant wind. We're getting the Humboldt Current on the Pacific, comes down from Alaska, which makes it ideal for Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. Also good for Riesling. There's not a lot planted, but it's a cool climate. This actually is colder day by day than Russian River because that has a real windy path where the fog has to come in. We have nothing to stop that wind from 25 miles from the water. Take a look at these trees to the right. See how they all lean to the right? And they're leaning that way because of the constant wind. We didn't plant them that way, okay? So this vineyard here was planted, the entire Santa Rita Hills was planted in 1997 and 1998. The winery opened in July of 2000. We do 24, 26, 27,000 cases a year depending on what yields we get, depending on what nature gives us. So I want to talk a little bit about where we are in the vineyard right now. This week they mowed in the cover crop here. You can see we're in the full bud break because of the warm weather. You can see the leaves starting to push. So this cover crop where you're standing was about 17, 18 inches tall up until this week. And it's a combination of 5 different plants. I know 4 of them. There's vetch, there's rye, there's sweet baby peas, and there's fava beans. These plants do a lot of things for our soil nutrition and for the vine health. But mostly they concentrate nitrogen from the air in their root systems. This is a very dangerous time of year for frost. That's something that could be devastating to the vineyard. So when you have a cover crop that's 18 inches high, say it starts to get real cold one night. All right, the cold air will descend, and it can totally affect the vines. All right, so we mulched everything down to the ground. So if we have any airflow, just the wind that comes naturally here, it'll be able to get all around the vine and stop that cold air from the temperature from dropping. Moving air, even if it's cold, is better than still air. The still air will freeze things. Okay, so this was done with a specific mind to avoid frost damage. That's why the cover crop was mulched. It was very healthy this year. We had there's plenty of nitrogen in the soil, and the vines are ready to absorb it now. So the vines now, you think of them as like a hibernating bear, okay? The vines have been asleep since they shut down October, November after they did their job and made the fruit for the last vintage. They go to sleep. So they wake up and they're hungry. They're ready to start the growth cycle again. They need nutrition. So when we have nitrogen in the cover crop between the rows, about 6 to 8 inches down, the vines, as they awaken, they can reach right over with their roots and grab that nitrogen and take it systemically through the plant. That way we don't have to spray nitrogen. This is a sandy loam. And most of this vineyard here, we have a section called Block M. You're going to taste the wine from there. 4 feet of sandy loam, then there's a 4-foot clay base. It's the only property we have with clay. So in terms of water drainage, when it rains, sandy loam is fairly porous, so it'll drain through. But when it hits that 4 feet of clay, it stops. Okay, so the water is much more available to those vines because of that dense clay. It'll hold the water for weeks. All right, whereas here it'll drain through. Behind this building, we have Syrah planted, named Donna's after Ron Melville's wife. That's 20 feet deep, pure sand. Okay, very, very well drained soil. A lot of minerality, a lot of high-toned aromatics in that wine because of the sand. But the only Syrah we have left at the vineyard is behind the building here because this hillside, which is the Babcock property, blocks the wind. Syrah is a thicker skinned grape. It likes more heat than we have. This is cool climate. This is a cool climate Syrah. The last thing we pick, usually October is early to pick Syrah. We usually pick it in November, sometimes December. As long as we don't have rain, it stays on the vine a long time, okay? So let's get back to the basics here. So we have 4 different varietals we grow. Chardonnay and Pinot Noir from Burgundy, Syrah and Viognier from the Rhone. That's all we do. Total of about 26,000 Ks. About 60% of that is Pinot Noir. We have 16 clones or types of Pinot Noir in the ground, okay, which is, to my knowledge, the most I've ever heard of in California. There might be 1 or 2, but most wineries have 3 or 4, and that's what they do, okay, and they work with that. If you think of it in terms of an artist's palette, what colors do you paint with? We have 16 to choose from in constructing our wines. We have a lot of options, a lot of different clonal material. Notice we have a north-south row orientation, which gives us great sun exposure because south is here. We get sun going across the sky during the day this way. But one of the main reasons we do this is for wind. We have this nice block of trees here along the driveway, which helps to slow down the wind. And then the first 5 or 6 or 8 rows also take a lot more wind pressure than the vines to the east. So when we go to harvest, and this is one of the cool things, there's so many cool things about an estate winery and why it's so important, is that if you're buying fruit from Joe down the road to make wine, right? Say you got a contract for 20 tons of Pinot Noir. You work with Joe and you say, Joe, here's how I want you to crop it, here's how I want you to leaf it, here's how I want you to tend to the vineyard, you know, to get the results that I want, to get the right yields from the plants, right? And Joe will do that. That's part of his responsibility as a farmer. But when it comes time to harvest, you have to go in and test the fruit and say, it's ripe today, I want to start the harvest, all right? They'll go through, they'll hire a crew, and they'll pick the vineyard, and you get your fruit, okay? This vineyard here, this one block of fruit, we made 10 passes to harvest it. We started harvest at 12, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. Everyone has miner hats. The tractors between the rows that haul the fruit have big light canopies. Everything's done by hand, all right? So the reason you pick at night is to deliver cold fruit. Typical night temperatures here in September and October, November are in the 40s, mid to upper 40s, and you don't want any yeast activity. There's yeast on the skins of the grapes. If you were to pick right now and it's probably around 80 degrees and some of the juice got out of the grapes, which happens when the skins break, the yeast will start to work on that sugar and convert it, and you don't want that. You want to control the process of primary fermentation. So we're usually done here during harvest by 9 a.m. cleaning. I mean, they finished most of the picking by 5 or 6 right around sunrise. So you want to deliver cold fruit not only to stop microbial activity with the yeast, but also to preserve the acidity in the grapes. All right, the whole game is the balance between sugar and acidity. So when they go through each morning or each day, they just pick. You don't want to pick the best or the worst. You just randomly pick. Fill up a big Ziploc bag full of the clusters. You'll taste some of the fruit. You'll examine the seeds for phenolic ripeness. You want brown seeds. You don't want green seeds to indicate ripeness. And the taste is number one, but also the sugar levels, the acidity levels are important. So we can go through row by row and say, this row's not ready, but 4 rows over might be ready, and those 3 rows over there might be ready. So let's just pick those 3 today. We'll come back to this one in 2 days and pick it, all right? So we can pick everything at optimum ripeness because it's our land. 70 to 80% of what Melville does is done in the vineyard. 70% of our energy, 70% of our money, 70% of our labor goes into the vineyard. Greg Brewer is a brilliant winemaker, hands down. He's a phenomenal talent, but he is a minimalist winemaker. And the Melville concept is we want wines that reflect the terroir, okay, the natural elements, the land, our place in the world, because we're an estate. One of the other things that makes Melville unique, we do not use any new barrels. We have not bought a new barrel here since 2008. So all the wood is neutral. After 4 years of using a barrel, they're neutral. They don't put any tannin or flavor into the wine. They still breathe. This is why you use the oak. You get micro-oxygenation while the wine's in the barrel, which helps to age the wine. Pinot Noir especially is a medium, lower tannin wine. We're getting tannin from the plant material. We're doing whole cluster fermentation in varying degrees. So we farm in August in particular before the harvest. We make sure we have great airflow, great sun exposure, so that the stems that hold the grapes together actually lignify, get woody, get brown, and they will actually provide tannin in the wine, all right, which gives you mouthfeel, gives you astringency, and also those are the things that will age beautifully over time. So we're getting all of that from the plant material, not from the barrels once again. Our philosophy is that oak barrels that come from France have nothing to do with Lompoc, California. And with Pinot Noir especially, a sense of place is very important.